Welcome back to a brand new video. For the more astute of you, you might be observing that I'm not actually playing Civilization 6. We're taking a look at the Victoria 3 review, which is supposed to release about an hour and a half from my time, and considering my erection is reaching cataclysmic levels right now, I need to find some way to blow off steam. But what is Victoria 3? Should you play it? And also, why do I think Victoria 3 is going to be the spiritual successor to Civ 6? And finally, how good is the game going to be? We'll talk about all the basic mechanics, what it is, how exactly am I going to succeed, and what you can do to last longer than both Liz Truss and the cabbage of lettuce that outlasted her in the British government. Starting off with what Victoria 3 is, for I guess the people who don't know, let's talk about Paradox games. Paradox games are essentially strategy games like Civ or Risk that require a PhD to understand and 5,000 hours just to figure out how to set up the game. They're fairly complex. Victoria 3 a lot less so. We'll get into why in the future, but essentially if you are a masochist and like getting hemorrhoids in your butthole, then I would highly recommend playing Paradox games, because there definitely is a sense of rewarding once you are able to last past the first month without forgetting anything major. Essentially, Victoria 3 is much more focused on the economic and diplomatic aspects of the game. You're not necessarily going to be going unga bunga, hitting the other man harder than he hits you, taking all his stuff, and breaking every article of the Geneva Convention imaginable while making Mao Zedong look like a champion for human rights. It's much more focused on the diplomatic aspects of listen, you're going to give me this shit, or I'm going to slap my giant schmeat across your face. Because going to war in this game is absolutely expensive. By the time you're finished, your economy is going to be looking even worse than Greece if they had about as much arable land as the Middle East. It's not looking too good for you if you do come in with the mentality that you are going to come in, swing your meat on the table, because eventually you're just going to end up as a castrated individual. Now, that's exactly what I'm going to be doing later, because no game development is going to stop me from breaking the Geneva suggestion. So if you guys do enjoy and want to see me play later with my absolute dogshit commentary, I'll probably be releasing this around 4 p.m. EST, around 3 or 4 hours after the game does come out, so subscribe not to miss out. The other thing I want to talk about, what sort of makes this game a lot more like Civilization 7 rather than a Paradox game, at least the feel. You know what I mean? Like if you close your eyes and you just grab something, like you can instantly tell if it's titties. Let's just be completely honest here. And it's sort of the same feeling I have with Victoria 3. Victoria 3 has a sort of unique production mechanic that sort of mixes in something like Civ along with something like Hearts of Iron 4. So you have these, I guess, construction things or whatever, construction sectors, and with it you can choose or have more buildings to build at the same time. For example, a shipyard at one construction sector is going to take 10 weeks, and it's going to take the exact same amount of time if you had 10 construction sectors. Obviously there are different modifiers you can balance, but if you have 10 construction centers, then that means you can build 9 other buildings. Of course, everything like this does take money, but industrializing is a huge part of this game, so you can go ahead, like as the British, for example, attack Egypt, take all their stuff, extract their artifacts, and have your museum set up for centuries and shit like that. But the production aspect, I think, is absolute genius. Like, no longer are you going to sort of be like, okay, I need to work on getting production modifiers. Instead, you get construction sectors, and everything is going to take, at the very least, relatively the same amount of times. The other thing I do want to talk about is, I think I might have scared a couple people saying you need a PhD in order to play this game. It's probably not accurate. It's probably more like a master's degree or something equivalent to that, but it is a lot easier to get into Victoria 2 than any other Paradox game. A lot of the reason for that is the tooltips they did introduce in Crusader Kings 3, CK3. They're back here, so for example, if you read something on a notification that says population, you can click on the population and it'll show you everything like population is currently going through an orgy gangbang or some shit like that. Then you could like hover over orgy, which might be like highlighted or whatever, and you could see the definition of orgy, what are the benefits, what are the drawbacks or whatever, which there are none, excuse me. I'm trying to talk to make this video without a script or anything, so if it does sound like I'm having a stroke or some shit, then that's probably why. But again, it does help you figure out sort of what you need to do in a way, and more to that effect, you also have journals. Now, journal entries are as if someone from the historical time period had a diary they kept and a sort of checklist, a shopping list in a way. So for example, if you are playing somebody like the Russian Empire, for example, you could like choose at the beginning of the game, like, do you want to go for production, more towards the economic side, more towards the military side, and the game will give you journal entries on what you should do to improve your current standing. For example, if you go military, then the game will be like, all right, if you want a big, beefy military that you can use, you know, just so big that you have to drag your nuts across the floor, then it'll show you, okay, like, you now have to get a professional army. How do you do that? How are you going to increase army strength or whatever? And exactly what you should be doing. A step-by-step guide. Kind of like, I guess, it's pretty much a guide at that point in the journal, but it doesn't sort of restrict you. It just gives you outliners of what you should be doing. Good example would be if like Joseph Stalin popped up in Russia or something. It could be like, step 1, kill every landowner. And how are you going to do that? You just go ahead and send in your KGB agents. Step 2, crash your fucking economy. Step 3, trust the Germans. Shit like that might help you, I guess, accurately represent what you should be doing. Again, aside from my shitty tier jokes, I hope you guys understand through analogy what I'm trying to say. The other thing I want to talk about is sort of the tech trees. The tech tree is, again, something you would find in Civilization, which is a lot, in my opinion, more familiar to me, of course, but I feel like it's also easier. It's kind of like the national focuses in Hoi 4 if you're a Paradox player, or the tech tree if you're a Civ player, and it also takes sort of the Eureka aspect of Civ and puts it into Wiki 3. For example, if you don't have to actually research a tech to get it, if you decide to go for all economic techs and the nation beside you's going all military, that might be a bad thing in most strategy games, because if they come at you with knights while you're still walking around with just a genetic giants club you'd find in Skyrim, you're probably not going to do too well. But with osmosis, or whatever the fuck the mechanic that allows you to absorb technology from other nations, you are going to not be as advanced as the nation who's focusing completely on military, but you'll at least be able to put up some sort of fight. Again, they're probably still going to shove their dicks straight up through your intestines, maybe even clog your throat if they get that far, but you should still be able to at least see they're making a diplomatic play on you, and then you could just go focus on military a little bit, and then maybe catch up by the time the war starts. Now, of course, this doesn't work for every nation on Earth. If I'm some sort of just country in the middle of Africa, right in the midst of Jumanji's environment, and the British come a-knocking, I'm not exactly going to be able to do anything to their guns and muskets with cannons, while I'm rocking here with spears that don't even have, I guess, iron researched yet. So it's sort of like an osmosis through civs that are right beside you, or even ones that are like in your trade route, if that makes sense. But I think that's pretty cool, and of course you can focus on technology to research in order to get that technology faster. Hold on, it's about to... That was an absolutely terrible burp. Apologies for both the stroke and the burp. If you guys are offended by that, as I would be, I understand if you decide to unsubscribe. The other thing I want to talk about is the limited war system for the most part. Again, like I said, unfortunately, we're not going to be making the crimes against humanity tier list, I guess, in this sort of game. It's much more limited. You can't just, like, declare war on someone like in most strategy games. I want to take this province, and then... psych, I'm just going to take everything you own because you can suck my dick. Instead, you actually have to enforce your war goals, and you need the war goals in order for you to capture the province. So you're not going to be able to take like the entire Ottoman Empire as Egypt. Of course, there are specific war goals that let you actually take entire countries. Like I think the Ottomans have one to like take the entirety of Egypt or whatever. But for the most part, if you are trying to expand militarily, you are going to have to put in a lot more effort. Again, saving up funds, pausing construction for the most part, increasing military spending, stuff like that, increasing military production, making sure you have all the raw goods, and you're going to get a lot less out of it. You're going to have to put in a lot more to get a lot less as opposed to most other games. The thing about military that's sort of been, I guess, at the forefront of Victoria 3's development is the fact that there's about as much decision-making at the tactical level as in a game of Risk. It might be more entertaining to watch me actually play the war card game, you know, where you like throw 2 cards down and whoever has the higher number wins or whatever. But I think it could be really good. I'm not too certain yet. I haven't played the game. I've just watched all the developer live streams in about a week since I've gotten addicted to this shit. But the changes in military are either going to be really good or really bad. You can hire generals who have different traits and different skills and whatever, put them on front lines, and then tell them to attack, defend, or I guess stand idly by. So you pretty much have the attack, defend, or whatever the fuck the Italians were doing in World War II. And again, if you have better technology, better economy, better shit like that, you're going to break through. Of course, attacking, you're going to get more casualties than defending, so if you are going up against the British while you're like the Ottomans who've gotten completely fucking neutered, no balls or anything like that, then you're probably going to want to defend. And of course, the Navy is also a much more important aspect of this game than in most Paradox games. With the Navy, it's not going to be like a, I guess, budget version, a goodwill version of like land military. You actually send them in to do naval invasions, to raid convoys, to impress soldiers, getting you into a war with the United States. It's a specific, there's a specific niche for the Navy to fill now, which I think is a really good idea. Again, I could be wrong. All of the shit I'm talking could be me coming out of my ass or whatever, and it ends up this game's absolute dog shit, which I'm known to do sometimes, but I just have a feeling about this game. I'm not too certain. The only problem I think I have with the way the military works, though, is how the hell are you going to limit stronger nations? Right? So if you take, especially in multiplayer, two people who are at about the same skill level, one of them's playing the British, the other of them are playing like the sick man of Europe, the Ottomans. Of course, the British are a lot stronger than the Ottomans at the start of the game, so what exactly can I do as the Ottomans to stop the British from snowballing and giving me a goatsy of atomic proportions? Because like if you take the British Ottoman example, the British are way more industrialized, they have way more arms industries or whatever. Like in something like Hearts of Iron 4, for example, to make things more clear, like you could always fortify in defensive terrain like the Soviets usually do, and then wait to bleed out the enemy's manpower and equipment dry, because defending's a lot better than attacking with casualties for obvious reasons. And then once they have no equipment, even if they're more technologically advanced than you, you could then make a really good advance. But the thing, also you have encirclements in Hoi 4. In EU 4, you could just wait till they siege a hilled fort or whatever across a river, and then you could attack them across a strait, stack wipe their army, and all of a sudden you've completely halved their military production, or you've completely neutered their manpower, and now you are in advantage, especially if you could get the Miltex faster, which in EU4, it's a lot more, I guess, easier for smaller nations to get mil-tech advantages. You hire an advisor, you focus on military. Even if your starting ruler isn't that good, you should still be able to progress fairly rapidly, unless you're a native, of course. The thing is, how do stronger nations get limited in this game? Because again, if I'm a lot weaker as the Ottomans and the French or something, how is it that I'm going to be able to catch up to them production-wise and military-wise and stop them from, I guess, invading me or from them kicking my ass in a war? I think it's much more of a problem in multiplayer, because I feel like in single player, there's always going to be ways to cheat the AI, but what's the point of not playing a strong nation? Like again, another Hoi 4 example would be, if you're Hungary, you have like bonuses to getting fighter 2s earlier, so then you could just like focus completely on the air while making a small amount of really effective divisions, and you could actually help in the war effort. But how exactly are you going to be able to do that in Vicky 3? That's probably the only I don't know about that I have about this game. And now the final thing I want to talk about is how good do I think this game is going to be on a scale of 1 to 10, and why I think it's going to be the sort of spiritual successor to Civ 6. Let's start with the second bit first. I feel like, again, talking about the production, the tech tree, the economy, also all that stuff, I feel like it's going to be a lot more similar to Civ and a lot more open, because Civ's much more of a easier game to get into, and the changes they've made to tooltips in CK3 and now the journal entries are going to make it a lot easier for newer people to get into Vic 3, which is why I think this could definitely be one of the best Paradox game, at least one of the most played they've ever made. Now, how good do I think it's going to be? I think at the start, as is with every single strategy game in existence over the last 20 years for some reason, or not some reason, they're much more focused on building a stable bedrock, if that makes any sense. Again, if you take the release version of EU4, Civ, Hoi 4, whatever strategy game, probably even chess, for example, if you go back far long enough, it's going to be a much less refined state, but especially in the strategy game industry, they're much more focused on, I guess, building the bedrock and then adding systems afterwards. You're not going to get the same Call of Duty every year. You're not going to get the exact same Paradox game every year, but at the start, Vicky 3 might even have less for you to do than something like Vicky 2, for example, but I think over the next 5 or 6 years, it could definitely grow to being one of the better games, if not the best Paradox game, and I think overall on release, it's going to be about a 5 out of 10. I say 5 out of 10 because, again, most strategy games at the start, they're not going to be as well refined, so I think it's going to be an average game. I do like what I see. I really like what I see, so I could be completely wrong on that. I'm just sort of trying to temper my expectations. In any case, that's going to be it. If you do enjoy the video, I am going to be playing this game, releasing it later today, maybe about, I guess, 4 or 5 hours after the release starts, so definitely stay tuned for that. And if you enjoy, like and subscribe. See y'all next time. Peace.